my parents would come, and the directors, whoever was running it, would always be like, your son's very talented. He's got the thing. And my parents, oh, thank you. And we get in the car, and my dad's like, that bitch is crazy. Look at the doctor. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Hola, mis amigos. You're listening to Oh My God Hi, Hijo de Dios. Hola. With me, George Lopez. Porque, ¿sabes qué? Let's do the show. Porque I got a lot of things to do. I gotta go to that dry cleaner ahí. My kid fell. Se pegó la cabeza. I gotta go get some Neosporin Paul.
You know what George is?
Oh, I'm sure he's around here somewhere.
What's his name?
George.
Lopez.
George Lopez.
Oh my God.
OMG.
OMG
Hi.
Oh my God, hi. Hey, you guys are married, have children. How was the pandemic? How was the pandemic for you guys?
Gosh, it was first of all, on the one hand, as a touring comedian, it was nice because my kids at that point were probably 12 and 10 or like 11 and 9. And so it was nice to be home. And we got to go and watch a lot of movies that like I wouldn't have had a chance to watch. And, and I got to watch with my kids. And that's, I was just listening to Anderson Cooper's podcast. He was talking about how when his mother passed away, he said the last 2 weeks of her life were really some of the best time he spent with her. He said, we just sat there and watched old movies that she loved.
Wow.
And I was like, you know what? That's what movies does. It brings us, movies or music brings us together.
Yeah.
So for us, we'd be sitting there with our kids and I'd be like, oh my God, Trading Places, Eddie Murphy, you got to see this.
I know, yeah.
Or Flashdance. My wife loved Flashdance. Just those movies. And then because the town was closed down, I got to get on a bike with my kids. I'd bike them all over town. I'd be like, let's go here. So there was some beauty to it, Obviously, financially, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not making any money.
Right.
But then again, thank God, I tell people we're lucky, we're blessed, because I know that like when it first started, I was hearing about people who living in their cars and stuff.
I know.
You know what I'm saying? I'm lucky that I was able to, have money saved up to be able to get through it.
I mean, you don't realize how much goes out until you don't have any coming in.
Yes.
And then you're like, wait a minute, is this like this every month? It's like every month.
Yeah.
You don't think about it because of you got the water in the ocean.
Yeah.
Goes up and down, and you're going along, and then all of a sudden they pull the water out there.
Yeah.
And how long? Nobody knew how long. I didn't think that. Like I was in. Oh, you drink Maz?
Okay. What is it? Oh, cream. Is this
That's
beer?
pretty good. Yeah.
Oh, this is. Cheers, gentlemen.
Cheers, man.
Hey,
It's nice
I
to see
didn't know this would be like this. This is beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers. And it's February, and they say middle of April. I ain't gonna make it the middle of April. now June, middle of June. Nah, I'm not gonna make it.
Yeah.
I won't make it that far. Was it 2 years?
2 years.
2 years, yeah.
It was crazy because I'm sorry, but real quickly, like the other part of me as a performer, because it's in you.
Yeah.
So you got to do something. So I'm sitting around. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm loving being with the family. We're opening up wine because everybody started like we were having wine.
Yeah.
I was like, this is great. We're gonna drink some wine and hang out with the family. But like by a weekend, you're like, I gotta do something. So then I get on my Instagram. I start doing Instagram lives.
Oh.
And I have a great time. I do like 15 minutes Instagram. I go, this is great. And then I go, I'll see you guys tomorrow. And I come back tomorrow. And I go, I'll see you guys tomorrow. And about a weekend, I'm going, holy moly. Now every day at around 5 o'clock, I got to go do an Instagram Live. And I'm not writing material that fast. I'm just talking about everything that's going on in my life.
Yeah.
And we had literally as soon as the pandemic hit, our dryer stopped working. So I had to go out into the laundromat, right? Mm-hmm. And then we had this little mouse or rat that was running around the house. And so every day I come up, I give an update. I'd be like, haven't found the mouse yet. I got the guy coming. So it was fun for a while.
Right.
But after a while, I was like, this is like, I can't keep this pace up.
It was pretty, it's vast. It's almost like somebody leaving you in the desert and say, okay, you got to find just keep walking and I guess you'll see.
Yeah.
But you don't know how far you're going to walk.
That's a great analogy because that's part of it. Because if you knew, I just got to get to blah, blah, blah.
It's September, end of September.
I'm good.
Yeah.
But when you don't, you go, and then I started, now again, a lot of comedians did not want to do Zoom shows. I'll be honest with you. I fell in love with Zoom shows. And I'll tell you why. Because as comedians, we got material.
Right.
And when you do crowd work, the guy's in the front, hey, what's up, blah, blah, you're talking to him. No one behind him really sees him. The people around him see him, right? When you're on Zoom and you got 100 people on your Zoom, and I would sit there, I start doing material, and then I would just start clicking through to find the guy. And I'd be like, hey, Tom, is that a parrot? I'd be like, look at Tom. And now everyone's seeing Tom.
That's smart.
And that became like, it was so, I was having fun with it, man.
Did Russell Peters know that? Because I think...
Was he?
He's all crowd work.
Oh, yeah. Oh my God. He would have been, like, for Russell, that would have been, I mean, it's
finding the key to
the Holy Grail.
Oh, my God.
Because it was so, listen, you don't know how many times I had, like, I get booked on something. Actually, the truth is, I was hesitant to do any Zoom shows because we're comedians, we're a little snobby, and we're like, we need an audience. I remember early on, George, I saw it was either John Legend or Chris Martin. One of these guys was sitting at his piano, and he's like, "Hey, world, let me play a little song." And he's playing his songs, and he plays another song, and I'm watching. I go, I'm so jealous. I go, he doesn't need to have he doesn't need laughs. We need laughs. And I go, he could do the same song 10 days in a row. His fans will come back.
They'll come back, yeah.
We got to come up with new material every day, and we need laughs.
Yes.
So the key was, the first time I did it was, somebody was like, oh, we'll do a fundraiser. Because early on, I was, we were all doing like, fundraiser for this, that, the other. So I said, all right, I'll do it. And it ended up being so much fun because it was actually sponsored by these guys at Google. And then I said, you guys want to do Zoom? They go, no, we'll send you the Google link. And the thing wasn't working, like the sound wasn't working.
Yeah.
So as soon as I was able, so one of the employees like called me on my phone and put my phone to the speaker. I go, first of all, let me just say something. I'm going to sell all my Google stock. You guys suck.
I mean, come on.
And then I went off. It was 10 minutes of just making fun of them.
Yep.
And I was like, this is amazing.
And how would you get paid?
I got different, so there was times when you do a gig like a comedian was putting together. And George, you know how it is, man. Like, I felt like, man, I was like, again, knock on wood, I do fine in my life.
Yes.
And I'd saved up enough, I was fine. And then you hear about friends that are like, they need to make a living. So then a comedian will hit you up and be like, hey, I got this show. There's 10 of us. I go, great, man, no problem. I didn't want to get paid. And then he goes, and send me your Venmo. I go, why?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, they're going to tip us. I go, really?
Oh.
And that became, George, that became part of the fun where I was like, guys, I just did the Kennedy Center. Now I'm working for tips.
Yeah.
I go, and it became so much fun.
And they can take it away.
And they take
it 10 minutes later. No, I'm taking that 5 minutes.
So there was gigs like that, and then there was gigs where like some dude was like, "Oh, I'm having a party," and he was, he's like, "I got money," and whatever, it was like $7,500, 10 grand, whatever it was for him and his family. I was like, all right, no problem. That's
man,
cool.
that's awesome, man.
Yeah. So it ran the gamut.
Yeah.
There was gigs that were like, universities were like, yeah, we got money, that's $25,000 to do a Zoom show. I go, and I click off, and I go back into my house. I go, man, if I get just 10 of these a year, I'd be happy. I'd be excited.
I think it's another way of still keeping it going. I mean, I don't think you need to. There's people that don't go out.
I do a lot of lecturing, and I don't like to do Zoom lectures because I like to be able to personally talk to people in the crowd and ask them questions. I like the closeness of it. I can't. If I get offered a Zoom to do...
And Zooms with who? Like the GOA?
Investigator groups, police groups, anybody. But I just...
Not the GOA.
Well, I don't even know what the GOA is.
Gordos of America. The GOA. You don't have to fit in the screen. It's like not having a screen. I can only hear it better.
Not even from GOA would I do.
Well, that's for you because you got to do legit. Like for us as comedians, they want us to be funny, right? So I think that's part of it.
Do they want us to be funny? Yes.
Well, obviously when they book you, right? So
how about that? We have a job where, like a cook could cook for years and maybe have one complaint.
Oh yeah, forget
and
it.
the motherfucker's a master chef, and we do shows and they go, I don't know, man. I think it's all a bunch of shit.
Yeah.
I think he's not as good as the last time I saw him.
George.
That's my first time I saw him. Oh, no. Yeah, he used to be way better than he was tonight.
Dude, I've had so many times where I've been on stage. This usually happens like at a corporate event. Because let's face it, when you're doing your show, People bought the tickets. 90 some odd % of those people are excited to see you, and they're going to give you love beginning to end. And even if they go, oh, he wasn't as good as they still love you.
Yep.
Right. But when you do these corporate events, I did one where I was like, it was a bar mitzvah, and this is one of those.
Those are so fun. I mean, first of all, hats off for even trying it.
Yes.
And then what?
Well, it was one of these things where I was hesitant. I was like, I don't want to do a bar mitzvah. And the guy got in touch. He's like, listen, man, my kid's a fan. My family's a fan. But it's going to be at the Waldorf Astoria. I go, all right, I'll fly out for that. I go out there, and you know how this is. So the guy goes, we've flown in a band from Israel, 40-person band. They're going to play after you. Oh, great. One of the biggest enemies for a comedian is a dance floor. Because now these people may as well be on the other end zone. They're in another world. So I tell the guy, I go, listen, man, I go, when I'm up, just bring the seats onto the dance floor. He goes, don't worry. The kids will come, they'll fill up the front. I go, all right. I didn't realize when he said kids, he meant like 4-year-olds. I started my act, and all of a sudden, now I'm babysitting.
Oh, my
They're pointing up, who is this? And I'm like, don't you guys have parents? Now I'm getting heckled by 4-year-olds. I'm looking in the audience, there's like 90-year-old grandmothers eating chicken staring at me.
Man.
And they'd hired me because, as you know, when they hire you, they're big fans of yours.
Right.
But exactly what you just said, I go, I know they're sitting there right now going, this guy is much funnier on YouTube. And so I started leaning into that, where I was like, listen, I know you guys are judging me and going like, I'm going to watch his videos. He's not as good on live. So I get through it, and it was one of those things where they wanted me to do like 20 or 30 minutes, but
what'd you do?
Well, I ended up doing like 45 minutes. I was looking for a big laugh to get out on. I started going to old time jokes. I was like, they know the old times, so I started going to old time jokes, not hitting. Finally, at the very end, I'm like, thank you, good night. I get off stage, I go right to the bar, get myself a little tequila, and this just so happened, a friend of mine happened to be there. He came over. I'm like, hey man. He's like, yeah man. And here's what's funny about that, because I thought, oh man, now they're all looking down at me. But 5 minutes later, that band was on stage playing music. They came and grabbed me and they pulled me in to dance with them. And I go, that's all they
had a good
I should have just been hired to come dance with these people.
Yeah.
Because they just want to be around you. But they'll judge your material.
Yeah.
I went to a fundraiser and Rudy was performing.
What's the fucking irony there? His whole fucking life is a fundraiser.
He was performing, and there were kids on the dance floor running around, and he was dying. He was dying. And you know how once I get laughing, I was laughing so loud, not because he was so funny, but because he was dying.
Yeah.
And I just start laughing, and we're friends. And I just start laughing because he's dying. Couldn't do shit. And once he got off stage, he just said, hey, cabrón, you were laughing because I was dying. That's why you were laughing. And it was. And he still remembers it.
It's tough to see your, I was always a horses for courses. Like I stick to my own. I didn't really do well at corporates. I mean, I did, but I didn't like the hit and miss aspect of it.
Yeah.
And, they would say, yeah, tell him he could do whatever he wants. One time I said, I did something for the Boy Scouts. It was 0 cussing.
Oh, God.
And somebody yelled out something. I said, it won't be too much longer now, motherfucker.
Oh.
That cost me $25,000, I think. $12.50 a bad word. Mother and fucker, they go together. Like peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, of course.
And the guy was, a whole hour. And then that toward the end, because the guy, and it took away all of the goodwill that I give him your fucking 25. Oh, yeah, 37.50.
Yeah,
but it's like I stopped doing the things where they hire you and then they expect you to not be you.
Oh yeah. That's a good point.
Now.
Yeah, you're right. It is. It's a tough. I always want to find, because I'm like you said, like there's some comics who are great joke writers,
right?
And they're great at getting up there. They're clean, and they're just going to do boom, 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 boom. Oh, you need a half an hour? I got you half an hour.
Right.
That's it. And I'm not even going to judge myself. I'm just going to get up there, do it. And they're perfect for corporates.
Right.
I, like you, I'm not that I'm that dirty, but I cuss. I'll cuss. And also a lot of times I go, like, for me, I always got to go like, is the owner of the company Persian or Arab? Or like, I'm trying to find my fan base.
Right.
I go, did my fan base bring me to this? And sometimes I say yes. Like I did, there was a corporate event for Jack in the Box franchisees. and it was an Indian guy and a Persian guy. My wife's Indian, I'm Persian. They know me. They brought me, and it was, listen, dude, this was fantastic because you get a bunch of, for me, like you, we do great in front of immigrants.
Right.
Because you talk about your background, they're gonna. So I started doing my thing, and then at some point I started going. I was like, let me see who's out here. So you got some white folks, you got some black folks, but you got like Filipino, you got Mexican, you got everything. Because that's what we hustle. Our people hustle, and it was so much fun because then you hit gold sometimes. So I go, wait a minute, who's got franchises in other countries? So, where are you from? Philippines. What do you call it in Philippines? What's Jack in the Box in Philippines? And the lady's like, Papa in the box or whatever. I'm like, Papa in the box. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Gold, right?
Yeah, gold, yeah.
So you have those types where it's your people and it's fantastic. And then you have types where you're like, wait a minute, how'd they get me? So I had one recently it was like, it was something like home tools and like it's some big company that sells stuff to like Home Depot and this and I go, okay, builders. All right, Persian, Armenian, I don't know, Mexican, what is it?
Yep.
They go, no, the audience is like a bunch of good old boys from Texas. I go, what? And they go, yeah. And I go, oh, I'm in trouble. And I went up in front of that audience. And now the other thing you realize, this was just like last year, we live in a time where even if you're not trying to be political, you're political. So I had a whole joke about like the mask and how I wore the mask, and there was people who didn't want to wear the mask, and depending on like if they like you look at them and be like, look at their face and be like, if the mask wasn't on, you're like, oh, you believe the election was fake or was it real? Like real, fake. Do you believe the Earth is round or flat? You know what I'm saying? It's like making fun of. And I realized that's political to these guys. You know what I'm saying? And so I went on stage. I was like, I can't do that. I can't do this. And like you said, it made me kind of. I was like, okay, I got to do 45 minutes, and I got to find all the family making fun of my kids. You know what I'm saying? And even then, I leaned into for a second because I think they brought. What's the name? Is it the Asian guy that's he's got that. I think he's from Texas.
Henry Cho?
Henry Cho. I think they'd had Henry Cho before, and they'd loved him. So I was like, all right, I'll talk about how I'm Muslim, but I'm not really Muslim. I'm Muslim-ish.
But he's Korean with a southern accent.
Exactly. So I wanted to talk about how I'm Muslim, but I'm Muslim-ish. I'm not really religious, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so I did some of that, and then at some point towards the end of the show, I was like, oh man, oh Jesus or something. I said something, oh God or something, and some guy in the back is like, oh Lord Jesus. He like yelled, like he got all into it. Like he got offended that I was saying like, oh Jesus or whatever. So he was yelling at me, and I was like, calm down. I told you I'm not religious. And then everyone's got, young tables laughing. People are looking at me like, what? And then I was like, Allahu Akbar. I said that just for fun. And then I could tell someone were like, what the hell?
Oh my God.
I couldn't help myself. You
At that point, I mean, it's all a bit of a fantasy, anyways.
Yeah,
it really is. It's all a bit of a fantasy.
Yeah.
Gil was a detective for how many years? You worked 17 years.
I was a homicide cop for 26 out of 38.
Wow.
But were you a detective or not? You were always a homicide cop.
No.
Well, don't be putting shit on your resume.
They're all cops. I worked homicides for 26 out of 38 years.
Yeah.
Los Angeles.
LA County Sheriff.
Shit.
Yeah.
That's no joke.
Cut the Night Stalker.
So.
Really?
He was the guy. Everybody else said it was more than one person, and he said this is the work of one person.
Wow.
And I think maybe the Night Stalker might have kept crime solidified. Like it created a crime world. Like they have crime cons.
Yeah.
And
everybody was together. The whole community, cops were not hated then. They wanted it solved.
I mean, I don't think anybody hates cops. I mean, there's some bad, there's
bad in everything.
If you hate cops, I mean, what's the option?
Yeah, you can't hate cops. You got, like you said, I think it's kind of like, again, it goes to the image, the general image, right? There's probably some people who are like, man, fuck cops, right? But as you just said, because that's what happened with the, defund the police slogan, right? Because the first thing was, as a matter of fact, I remember.
First of all, how about a slogan? Nobody knows what it is.
Yeah.
It's not defund. That's
yeah. Well, it's. I was talking to this FBI guy who was like, it's reimagine the police, because you shouldn't send out a cop when there's some homeless guy who's kind of like having a breakdown, you got to send out someone who's, knows how to deal with that, right? But I remember I went to the Black Lives Matter protest when it first was in L.A. and right there on the Pan Pacific Park. I remember walking around and they were like, no justice, no peace. We George Floyd. We stand with George Floyd. And then when they were like, defund the police. I was like, I kind of like the police being around if I need them. You know what I'm saying? So I agree. There's a nuance there.
I think that we all, somebody's got to bring the old ladies' trash cans in.
There you go. I could sit there and say that during that time, I could talk about doing what I was doing. Now, it's kind of like when I came back from Vietnam. You didn't talk about Vietnam. Now I don't talk about what I did because of the defund the police, anti-police sentiment.
Did you ever use your badge for, if I was a cop or a police officer or a detective or a fucking explorer scout, I don't give a fuck, and I had a badge, I would have girls sucking my dick with that badge.
Bad lieutenant.
12 years old. Just put yellow tape on. Hey, Chaz, come over here. Come over here in this plastic house. I would. I think I would have been a bad lieutenant.
No.
Like they wouldn't even have to. If they did my fingerprints, they would have panocha on it. Like they could put ink in it. The ink's not. The
ink's married.
Oh, I know why now.
That's funny.
Here, just let us wipe your hand down.
No, that didn't happen.
I think I would be that. I mean, you can't do it anymore because everybody's got a body count.
The thing is like there was a time when cops like the neighborhood knew the guy, or what I'm saying, there was that. Mm-hmm. Now the number LA's a big place, right? And again, look, we all know you always say it's about how you do things, right? You can either be an asshole about it or you can be nice about it.
It was even back in the 70s.
I would be doing breathalyzer.
Here. When I was working patrol in the 70s, the people knew me. The neighbor, hey, here he comes. They knew who I was because I reached out to the people.
Yeah.
They were afraid of they were afraid. No, hey, we're all the same people. It was just a job. And so I did get along with everybody.
I used to think a cop never got afraid.
Yeah. That's what you think. Yeah,
you think when they show up, they're bigger than they're bigger than everybody else there. Yeah. They'll control the situation.
You're right.
They're actors.
Yeah.
They're just good actors.
Yeah. They are.
Yeah.
They have insecurities.
That's what they have to be.
Yeah.
And
well, that's like the movie. That's from the movies, Dirty Harry and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
You go, oh, this guy's just badass. He's gonna handle it.
Right.
You're right.
Yeah.
I grew up in Marin and Tiburon, which was like you were talking about murders. Like we had like one murder in 100 years.
Wasn't Robin Williams from out there?
Ron Williams from out there too. Yeah.
Tiburon,
He actually went to I went to the same high school he went to, Redwood High School.
Yeah.
And Tiburon was a place where like the cops would coach the baseball team, so you knew the guy, Dave. He was my coach.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, wow.
And there was no crime. Like there was very little crime there. But there was, you had trust. The only thing was like, okay, they pulled you over for speeding again. That was the main thing. But yeah,
how'd
man.
you end up in Tiburon though?
Because we moved. So we left Iran in late.
Are your mother and father still alive?
My father passed away in 2009. My mother's still alive. So I was born in Iran in 1972. Left Iran in late 1978 as protests were happening in the streets of Iran, right? So similar to
Do you still remember the sound and the colors of that?
Dude, I remember. My father was a successful businessman. All right, he had an electric company that did well, and then at one point, the Shah's regime, the Shah being the former king, and I say that because younger people don't know about it. So if they're listening right now, they might not know. The Shah's regime nationalized electricity, but my father told me the story. He goes, someone from the regime called me down and goes, hey, we've chosen your company as being one of the companies we're going to, subcontract with. So that really helped him go off, right? And my dad, the closest fictional character that I can relate to as my father was Don Corleone from The Godfather. Because my dad was somebody who people would come to and be like, hey, my kid, my kid's got to do mandatory military service. Any way you can get him out? And he'd be like, let me make some calls. He was that guy. His friends were like, chief of police, generals, this, that. He was also very generous.
Yeah.
Or as we say in Persian, you say large, but with a J, large.
I'm very large.
The guy's large.
large,
yeah, you got to be large. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, and again, that's a cultural thing, right? You know, so my dad would be the guy who would like, I don't know, if you're going on vacation, you take the whole, like, you take everybody's families on a vacation to wherever. We're all going, let's go.
Oh, wow.
That kind of guy. So late 78, protests began. And so growing up, all I remember as a kid, I was like 6 years old when I left. All I remember as a kid, American culture has so much influence around the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember my comic books, Spider-Man, Batman. Yep. I remember Muhammad Ali.
Yep.
Muhammad Ali was loved. Every Muslim country loved Muhammad Ali.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I remember as a kid, I had all of his toys. He was my hero, you know? And when I came to America and I learned about the things he stood for, he became even more my hero.
Right, sure.
And then what happens is these protests begin, right? And I remember being a kid and all of a sudden there was a curfew, 10 o'clock, lights out. So I remember me and my cousin would be like looking out of the street and there'd be cop cars going by, flashing lights into the windows. And then we would hear protests in the distance and we would hear gunshots and stuff. And I remember one time having to go down to the basement because we heard like, they were like, everyone in the basement. And my dad was already in America on business. So my mom got me and my sister, everybody, we ran downstairs into our basement, just waiting. And as a kid, I don't know what's going on. You know what I'm saying? And the way I always like to say it, my dad came to America. He was on business in New York. And he told my mom, listen, things aren't looking good. Why don't you come out, bring the two older kids. It was me and my sister, 6 and 8. And I had a baby brother who was like just about a year old. He goes, why don't you come for about, come for 2 weeks, let things cool down, and you guys can go back. And I always say we packed for 2 weeks, we stayed for 40-something years. Wow. You know what I'm saying? Wow. It got more and more and more.
What about the brother?
So my brother was 1 at the time. We left him back in Iran, and then like a year later, he came through family and stuff. He came back. He came to America, and the truth is, he struggled his whole life. We lost him in 2014, addiction stuff. So I think he struggled with that his whole life because you know how as a young person. Those first years are very formative.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You know, and so I'm guessing us being away, there was separation and all that. You know, and he was a great kid. His name's Kashi, and he was like my. You know, I have one other younger brother right now, but yeah, we lost Kashi in 2014.
Wow, man, that's tough.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
Sorry for your
Did he have it? Did he have it growing up, and it just kind of could never get?
He was this kid who was charismatic, man, and he was just like, again, one of these. He my father, I think, being who he was, he put some pressure on all of us, and not in a bad way, but he was like, I'm your, like, when your dad is, this King Kong, like your dad shows up, he's like throwing around money and running everything. Yeah. You're like, oh, I want to be like that guy, right? And then also he tells you, you're Mz Jobrani's son. Don't ever forget that. Like you're, I have a name. Don't mess my name up.
Right.
So as the oldest son, I took that on my shoulders. And as a matter of fact, like I probably could go to therapist, talk about like want to be a people pleaser and just like always wanted to take care of everybody.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that my brothers got a little bit of that pressure on them. And I think that my brother, Kashi, his problem was he was a great baseball player, great guy. Everybody loved him. I think that one of the issues he had was because who his father was, and it had gotten in his mind like, well, I don't need to like work at like a lower level. I should always be at the top level. So I remember when he was in high school, I got him a job. I was working as a waiter. I was in college at the time. I was at UCLA. So I got a job at the Sports Club LA at that point, which was like the hottest sports club in town. So I got a job so I can have a membership. Like Magic Johnson would come in and stuff.
Yeah, that's where he used to work out.
Yeah, and I was like the waiter at the restaurant. So they had a cafe on the side, and he was in high school. I go, hey, bro, I'll get you a job. You get a, because me being the oldest son, I always had jobs in delis and this and that, and I liked that work ethic. He came to the deli and worked for 2 weeks, and after 2 weeks, he's like, man, I don't want to be taking orders from these people here. Like these people, are like, he's like, these people are losers. And I was like, oh, dude, that's the wrong mentality.
Yeah, right.
I go, you got to get, because he thought he should be CEO. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, man, it was a tough loss.
It's a trip because sometimes people have these traits that, I mean, my friend Ernie who passed in April, I knew that guy my whole life, and the way he was flaky and unreliable and last minute. Oh, hey man, I can't make it, motherfucker. Now, like, okay, well, you got the card. Like, we were gonna go do stand up in the 70s, 80, and he'd call at 7:15. Hey man, I ain't gonna make it. So I would have a car, and I in a way, it made me. I went back to my room. I closed the door. I'm like, okay, well, you can't rely on this dude. So if you're gonna go do stand up, you're gonna have to go without him. And I didn't want to go alone. And I would go by myself and be awkward by myself and all that other shit by myself, and then you wouldn't get on and you drive back. Or if you did poorly, you get in the fucking car and you're like, man, oh my God, that was awful. You want somebody to be able to, like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah.
And he was just that way his whole life.
Yeah.
I mean, and it just, eventually I just got kind of tired of an unreliable guy you've known your whole life.
Yeah, and you know, when you look at that, you probably can go back, all of us can go back to our childhood and it'll explain why we are how we are, right?
Yeah.
Like your relationship with your parents as a kid, et cetera. And so you take that and then you add on top of that, obviously, addiction. Like I see it now, it's like, it's heartbreaking. All this stuff, like these kids are with the fentanyl and this and that, and you go, God, like you really wish, because for us in our house, as much as my father was this lion, he also was a big drinker. And culturally in the Persian community, it was like okay to smoke. They would smoke this. Basically, it was like a opium kind of a thing. Oh. It was kind of like weed because we were like right next to Afghanistan, right? So they'd be smoking that stuff, and so.
But it wasn't weed. It was like weed plus.
It's weed plus. It's opium basically.
Yeah.
So they sit around. They get high, but for them, they were functioning. That was part of their culture, right? So my dad passed at 76. He goes, listen, I've lived 700 years. He goes, because he's seen a lot. He's done a lot. He's been, but the problem you don't think about is, the effect that has on kids. Like for me, I saw my dad drinking. It was no big deal. So at the age of 14, I was with my friends. We're like, at my friend's house drinking, which you go, okay, that's, this seems fine. But then when you have your own kids, you go, gosh, I really hope they can have healthier outlets rather than going into, and casual drinking is fine, or weed or whatever it is, but it's scary. It's scary when you see where it can lead. Like when you've lost a brother to it, you go, okay, this can actually go really south really fast.
Yeah. And there is, I had my uncle Roger. He was like my favorite uncle, and he was just, always worked in a car wash, and he said, my dream is to own a car wash. So one Christmas I gave him a water hose. He got all fucking mad. I thought it was a fun joke. He's like, what's this? I remember he opened it up and he just, I just crushed him, man.
Wow.
It's a fucking joke to you?
Yeah.
I said, hey, man,
you
got to wash cars. You need a fucking hose, man.
Yeah.
And he was just, again, I don't think he wanted to own a car wash. He said it, so at least he could have something.
Yeah.
My dream is to own a car wash.
Yeah.
It's like, get your fucking water hose. But I don't think he wanted to be an owner. He was just saying, so that he looked like he had something he was aspiring to. But he worked at a car wash.
Yeah. No, man, it's interesting. It's like, we all have dreams, but again, it's like you have to have, again, they say kids, it's like kids are like flowers. You gotta water them for them to grow, right? So you gotta give them that confidence. You gotta give them. Besides that, you gotta give them the tools. Like you can't just be like, oh, I want to be a rock star. All right, go start learning how to play the piano from A to Z. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
You can't just.
I think it's amazing that you could. Pass by this piano place and you played instruments. I think it's unbelievable to me that a child could get a trumpet in school, have your dad buy you a guitar, have a piano that your aunt who died sent you a piano, and that you could play that thing and sustain and have a career at something by just being in a room and just, some kids would just be in there forever. And you just create this fucking business for yourself.
Isn't that crazy?
And you entertain the world out of isolation.
Dude, it's the craziest thing. I talk about that with my kids. I tell my son and my daughter too, but I go, guys, I don't know how this just happened, and I go, I get to sit around and tell jokes, and I've made a living. I've bought a house from it. I've done this. So exactly what you just said. And I tell them, I go, if you could find something you love, I go, I'm really you can create your own. You can create your own. industry almost.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I'm saying?
Where did you? Because you're educated, and usually the comedians are not highly educated. And they're just kind of the odd man out. Okay, you two guys didn't make it. You sit around making fun of the fucking 9 who made it.
Yeah.
That fucking motherfucker,
Yeah.
And you just align with somebody, and you just become like class clowns.
Yeah.
How did what is your earliest memory of comedy and of what? Who got you on that path?
Yeah, so what you just said is true. Like a lot of comedians start younger, right? So for me, I've thought about this a lot. Like so we come from Iran to America, late 70s, settle in Northern California, Marin, Tiburon. It's an affluent place, but then quickly the hostage crisis happens, and back then they start calling you fucking Iranian. They start beating you up, all that shit, right?
Yeah.
So I remember
they would beat you up in school.
Yeah, I don't know if I got beaten up.
Anyway,
I know my friends got.
targeted.
I know my friends got beaten up, and I remember a kid called me fucking Iranian. I remember my pedals got stolen off my bike.
Yeah.
Like, all kinds of stuff was happening where I was like, "Yo, I remember getting in one fight, and I wonder if it had to do with that. I still don't remember because it was 3rd grade, and we were fighting so much that the bell rang, and me and this guy were still wrestling, and the teacher came out and goes, "What are you guys doing?" Well, we're finishing a fight. Like, get inside, clean up, get inside.
Right.
So. But I do remember a 6th grader calling me fucking Iranian when I was in the 4th grade, and I remember a couple things. First of all, I was good with sports, played soccer, learned baseball. So that helped on kickball. That helped, right? The other thing I used to do is I used to bring a ton of candy to school. Like we'd go grocery shopping. Back then, nobody knew. Oh, don't get sweets and this. My mom would have one cart with food. I'd have one cart with Twinkies, Ho-Hos, Starburst. I'm telling you, my first foray into the American culture was a Twinkie.
Oh, yeah.
Nibbling off the top and licking that cream.
Oh, yeah.
I go, what a country, man.
Man, right?
And so I remember
Those motherfuckers, they don't light on fire Twinkies.
Yeah.
You could run in there. Somebody said a Twinkie. They don't. It's all fuck. They don't light on fire. Just have to wait. We'll go get them when they turn the fire off.
Yeah,
they'll be. They're gonna be good.
So I used to bring candy to hand out. So I realized early on I was bribing my way into friendships.
Yeah.
And then the third thing I think was humor, because as a kid, again back then, my parents, they're upstairs hanging out. I'm downstairs watching, Woody Woodpecker, Bugs Bunny. Tom and Jerry, the whole thing, hours.
Yeah.
Now we go, oh, no more screen time. I'm 4 hours. I'm like,
hours, man.
You're doing all that. You're like, oh, this is funny, right? Then you graduate a little bit later, and then I discover Eddie Murphy, and I go, oh shit. I go, that's what I want to do, And I have my tickets still from seeing him live doing Raw at the Oakland Coliseum in 1987, but even before that with Delirious. And even before that, Eddie Murphy, the tape. We would sit there listening to the tape.
The one he did in
the
New York.
Pope Mobile, all that. I mean, it was.
So he goes, he goes, where did you get hit? On Broadway. No, like, where did they shoot you? He goes, no, what part of your body? Not on the street.
Yeah.
That tape from a club is.
Yeah.
It's. What's it called?
It's called Eddie. I think it says Eddie Murphy. I think whatever it was.
Comedy isn't pretty.
Yeah, that's the one where he also goes. He talks about how cars are talking.
Yeah.
Your lights are on. Your lights are
man,
on.
Somebody stole your back.
I said, we go get the motherfucker.
He did that on the Tonight Show.
Yeah.
That one's in a. I had it in a cassette.
Yeah.
And it was. And then Billy Crystal had a cassette that was "You Look Marvelous" cassette.
Oh yeah.
That was fucking
you
amazing.
You look marvelous.
Amazing.
Dude, all of that stuff. I became this huge fan of comedy. I'm sitting there. I'm like, whoa. What is this?
Steve Martin,
and then the Evening at the Improv, and then you had the Dangerfield specials.
Yep.
You discover Andrew Dice Clay, Dom Herrera was on there. You got Sam Kinison. I saw Sam Kinison at the Fillmore live when phones were still on the wire.
And he'd bring the guy up there.
Yeah.
And he'd go, tell me what happened. He goes, oh, my wife fucked my brother. And they go, get her on the phone. He did that little laugh. Get her on the phone. Ah! Oh, man. There's a comedy. I'm not sure if it's still on Netflix, but he did it at the Wiltern.
Yeah.
And at the end, he'd bring a guy on. He did it at all the shows.
Yeah.
And the guy in the Wiltern video is yelling into the phone with Sam. And I think he comes off the ground. He's so animated. He's letting it out on her. And it's just a crazy thing to see that this guy probably wouldn't have said anything. and then Kinnison had him come up, dial the number, and he has that voice. Hi, is Sherry there?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. Hi.
And, yeah. He did a little giggle.
Yeah.
And he'd lay in, he'd fucking, you fucking bitch, you fucking twat. And he's yelling, the fucking whore.
Yeah.
I mean, man.
And the crowd's dying.
Their diet's really, he did that. I remember those guys, the Dunes, there was a Comedy Store at the Dunes in Vegas in the late 80s. And those guys would be in there and he'd be there and they'd be doing all that. You know?
Yeah. And all of that stuff for me had the influence, but then coming from this background of immigrant parents who were like, no, you're not going to do this. Like, because what I did.
I can't imagine that they would say, yeah, I think it's a good idea.
No, not at all. And the truth is, so at the age of 12, I did my first like musical at school. I did a play, and I got in, and I got on stage. And George, I fell in love with being on stage. I was like, this is it, and I was good at it because the lady, I remember her name. Her name was Shirley Bombright, who I think she recently passed away. She was the director of this 7th, 8th grade play. All right.
And what was the play?
What was that?
What was the play about?
Oh, the play was called The Boyfriend, the musical, The Boyfriend. You know, won't you, Charleston, with me? Da 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 da. Won't you, We learned the Charleston.
Oh, wow, man.
And while the band is playing that, a rodeo do. I mean, it's still in my head.
Wow.
Still in my head.
Wow.
38 years later, bro. But I was in 7th. I was in 7th grade, and the 8th graders had all the lead parts, and I was just like a background dancer singer.
Yeah.
And Miss Bombright sat us all down before, and she goes, listen, when you're in a musical, there's like, whether you got the biggest part, smallest part, you got to show up to every rehearsal. When you're dancing and singing in the background, you got to be smiling. Smiling. And I took that to heart. And I think part of that is being an immigrant kid. Like, I knew, like, if my parents said something, because, you know, like, white kids.
But that's great advice.
It's a great advice, but white kids in America are always like, you know, no, fuck you, Dad. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where we could so when an authority figure says to me, smile, that means I got to smile.
Yeah.
I think to the white kids, they were like, who is this
smile.
bitch? Right?
Yeah.
So for me, I took it to heart. So I remember one day I show up, and it's rehearsals, and I was sick. I had a cold, and I go over. I go, Miss Bombright, I'm a little under the weather, but I know you said we should all show up, so I showed up, and I'll be here. I'll be singing and dancing. Okay, no problem. So we start the rehearsal. We're singing and dancing. I'm smiling. I'm singing and dancing. She stops the whole thing. Everybody stop. Look at him. She starts pointing at me. Look at him. And I'm like, I'm looking around like, me? She's like, yeah. He's sick. He's here. He's singing. He's dancing. He's smiling.
Wow.
Learn from him. And I was like, whoa.
You still remember that, too.
Bro, took me to the other level. I was like, I can do this. And then after that, the next year, I got the lead in Little Abner. They put me, that same director was like, you're coming back. You're going to be Abner. And it was like this thing where my parents would come, and the directors, whoever was running it, would always be like, your son's very talented. He's got the thing. And my parents, oh, thank you. And we get in the car. My dad's like, that bitch is crazy. You're the doctor.
Yeah, that bitch is crazy.
Yeah, bitch is good. So it did for a while. I got into plays. I got into my high school program. My teacher there, I'm still in touch with her. Her name is Michelle Swanson. She was like, "You got the thing." Every teacher would be, you got the thing. Like whatever that was, I was uninhibited. You know what I'm saying? Like I wasn't on stage feeling the.
I was about to say that you seem very in control on stage, and it's poise that is not easily learned. I mean, you have to have it.
Yeah, it's like they go, can you teach funny? I go, you could probably learn to write some funny, but to be on stage, you know how it is, man. It's like people love you on stage because you have this aura that you're up there on, and it's like it's just what you're born with. Now,
but also if
confidence.
But also if you're a diver, let's say you're a diver.
Yeah.
And you're like you would just have to let yourself go in whatever you do.
Yeah.
Because if you're a diver and everybody's diving and then you jump and you're like, I don't think and you got to believe it.
Absolutely.
Every time.
Absolutely. I call it, I compare it to surfing. Because I can only imagine. I've tried surfing a couple times. I'm not that good.
Hard as fuck.
But when those guys are in that wave, they're riding the wave.
You were a surfer.
I laugh because I did try surfing one time, and I thought I was going to drown.
Oh yeah.
Because I couldn't get up on the goddamn thing, and all I do is fall off. But then I'm underneath the board and I'm holding on because that would stay afloat.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to, so I'm holding on to that, and I'm laughing underneath the water.
Yeah.
Taking in water, and I finally get up, and I'm still laughing.
That's beautiful.
Because you had to be a fat fuck fuck to get up there, and people have to be laughing at you. And I did it for an hour, and I walked back in with a board, and the guy just says, "Oh no, who give you that board? That board too small. You need big board." I said, "Now you tell me."
Like Kelly Slater, we used to play in the AT&T at Pebble Beach.
Yeah.
And we would do the 3M challenge on Wednesdays. And at sunset, that fucker would go out there in his surfboard and surf right where we were playing golf.
Isn't that crazy?
I mean, it had a picture of him.
It's in his soul. He has to do it.
I mean,
it's why, like I said, during the pandemic, I had to get in front of people.
Yeah.
I had to do it. Like I couldn't. I've talked to other comics who were like, "Yeah, I didn't do anything for." Did you do anything during the lockdown? I couldn't. I had to. I don't know what it is. Maybe I got some deep psychological issue, but I had to like talk to people and get out in front of people.
Yeah.
But then the analogy with surfing comes in with, you're not thinking. You just are, and that's in life. Like I tell my kids, I tell my wife. Listen, the times I've been the most charismatic with a woman that's beautiful, my wife was one of them, was when I wasn't thinking. I just started talking. The moment you start thinking,
yeah.
You know how many times I was at like a club or a bar and I see some beautiful girl and I just kind of look and then I look the other way and I'd be like, all right, go say hi. And no, done.
Gone, yeah.
You're done. But the moment I go, whoa, and my hand's out and I'm talking, it's always led to something good. Similarly with stand-up, I think, or being on stage is this thing of like, I'm comfortable here. And people feel that, I'm good, I'm comfortable. I'm really like, this is my party, I'm running the party. And by the way, I know that you've had this experience. You get to a point after several years where it's like, you know what? I'm just gonna go off for a minute. Fuck all my material. I'm just going to go talk to this person for a minute. And you just trust. That's where the wave is. Mm-hmm. You just trust. You start talking. Next thing you know, you're coming up with the funniest shit and you reflect upon it. You go, how did I come up with that?
But also, like an officer, if you hear shots fired and you show up, now your senses are heightened.
Yes.
Now you hear everything.
Yeah.
Now where you would just be in the same car driving down, now you're paying attention to everything.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. Instead, you go up there. Because it's like shots fired, and then you're up there controlling that whole room.
Yeah. And
you couldn't have that same attitude of sitting down there before.
No.
And then walking up there with that, it would just be like a sieve. Everything would fall out of it.
Yeah.
George has that ability. I learned something like Goa of America. He just came up with that on top of his head.
Yeah.
The GOA.
The GOA.
Because he was in a, I love music, have a lot of guitars and stuff, but I'm not very good at it. But you wanted to play the guitarón like that.
Yes.
And how was your second lesson?
Second lesson was even better than the first one because now he taught me, a few more notes, and he said, okay, now watch what we're going to do. And he started playing rhythm on a vihuela, just behind me, a little guitar with a little few chords. And he says, now, you ready? A. B.
Oh.
B. C, and E and D. So I got 5 notes, and he's talking. I got a sore finger.
Do you learn notes on a guitarón or chords?
Notes right now.
You're hitting
right now, but I have the feeling that it's going to turn into these are the notes for this chord.
Right.
These are the notes for this chord, and you'll be able to play anything you want to play.
I was a big advocate of telling people. Everybody has something that they could do well. Whether you find it or not, it's in there.
Yeah.
Whether you're not looking, if you're not going to look for it, you're not going to find it.
Yeah.
And you're like, there's nothing. I do like to draw, and it's like, well, then draw.
Yeah.
Like then do those things.
Yeah.
Because fucking life is tough, man.
And
you find something in yourself that is it's not anything you have to buy or control. It's just there.
Absolutely. And that's the beauty is when you find that you don't have to be the best at it. If you're really good and you can go on and make a living, that's fantastic. But if it makes you happy, then
that's what this is doing. And everything at this point in time in my life, I'm 73 years old.
Yeah.
There is nothing that I have to do, nothing that is demanding for an income because I have a retirement coming in. I'll never be rich. I'm happy.
Yeah.
I got friends. I got family. Everything I wanted to play was lifelong. It was a beautiful dream to play this big bass mariachi guitarra, and now I'm taking lessons for it.
Well, the reason I ended up doing this finally was because I kept flirting with it. I kept getting on stage, getting off stage. Then my parents said, go be a lawyer. Then I went to undergrad. Then I was like, maybe I'll be a professor. I went to graduate school.
Oh, shit.
And then I dropped out of that. And then I was actually at an advertising agency working as an assistant. And I was doing plays on the side, just having fun doing plays. And it was a comedy. And there was a guy there. His name was Joe Rhine, this older guy. And he was in his 60s at the time. And Joe was one of these, we have guardian angels that come our way from time. You don't know where they're coming from, but they find you. Mm-hmm. Joe found me. And so he saw me making a dub of this play I was doing for the other cast members. They wanted, because I was working at an ad agency, we had like a dub room. And he's watching, he goes, hey, Maz, you're funny. And he was with this guy who was always positive, complimentary to everybody. You're funny. I go, thanks, Joe. He goes, have you ever thought about doing this for a living? I go, Joe, my Miss Bombright told me to do it. My high school teacher, I go, everyone's been telling me to do it. I said, now I'm at the time, I go, I'm 26. I go, I'm going to work for like another 3-4 years, save up some money. And at 30, I'm going to go for it. And he goes, can I talk to you for a second? He took me into his office. And it's just what you just said. He sat me down. He goes, listen, Maz, I'm in my 60s. There were some things I wanted to do in my 20s. But I just kept putting it off, and I never got to it. He goes, so if you really want to do it, do it.
That's an important for people that are listening. And I worked in Northridge, and I would walk across the street to the Northridge Mall with this guy, Merle Richardson, and he was in the military. And we were walking to lunch one day, and I said, hey, Merle, how long you been here? He goes, George, I've been here now 30 years. I go, you don't know whether it's 20 or 30? We were still walking. I still remember us walking in the sunlight over Northridge and to eat. And he said, I got out of the military. I was looking for a place to land for a year. And I've been here 30 years. And that's when I said, I gotta get the fuck out. I gotta get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Like I gotta move things around. And then I was working nights in Van Nuys with my grandmother. And I would just be there by myself, and I would be like, "Man, I'm gonna do comedy. I'm not fucking working nights. I mean, could you be further away from comedy working at night?" And I went in there, and this guy George Martin, and I said, "Hey, man, I talked to you, George. He was a cool dude." And I remember he was trying to quit smoking. I caught him, and he's like, "Yeah, come on in." And the fucking smoke was coming out the. He had like a quadruple bypass.
Oh God!
And he wasn't supposed to be smoking. And I caught him, and he's like, "Come in."
That's funny.
And then the fucking smoke would come out right there. And he told me, I told him, "Hey man, I want to do this, and I'm working nights. I can't work nights and do it. I'm gonna have to be." And he said, "Let me try to find you a place during the day." He says, because when I was your age, I wanted to be in a band, and my friends all played, and I worked. Yeah. And they left me, and they had some success. He goes, so I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I'll find you a place during the day. And he found me a place in this workshop in the back, and I worked there.
How old were you?
I was 19. I'd already done it. I started when I was 18.
Oh, wow.
I just turned 18. I went to the Comedy Store May 5th, 1979. I saw Danny Mora, Yakov Smirnoff, Tim Thomerson, and Lois Broomfield, and me and my friend Ernie were still in high school.
Yeah.
And we were sitting there going, fuck, man, this is what we got to do.
This is what we got to do.
Yeah.
I was lucky, the job that I did, because I had been on like 32, 33 years already, and I had to go to some middle management school, and I'm in San Diego, and you sit around the room, and the instructor says, like alcoholic, and hi, I'm Gil Creel, been on 32 years, I'm a lieutenant. And so he came to me. I said, Gil Creel, 32 years, this is what I'm doing. And he said, 32 years. He said, you realize you're working for free? I said, yes, sir. He said, no, I'm serious. If not for free, damn close to it with the amount of time you got on the department, you realize you could be retired. I said, I understand, sir. He said, well, then my question to you is why? Why would you be working when you could be retired working and get the same amount of money? I said, correct me if I'm wrong. At the beginning of this morning, didn't I hear you talking with some of the guys in the class saying you just played in the best golf tournament you had ever played in, only cost you $250 to play in it? He says, oh, yeah. He says, I love golf. He says, it was the best tournament I've ever been in. And I said, okay, that's my point. He said, what's your point? I said, you pay $250 to do what you love to do. I'm doing it for free. I love what I'm doing.
There you go.
So I was blessed. I didn't want to.
Only a detective could put that together that fast. I would have been like, "Hey, fuck you!" They come back the next day. I got something to say to that. Oh, he left. Man.
That's funny.
I would think of shit. It's funny when you start doing comedy. On the way home, you go,
Oh, forget it.
and then all of a sudden you start to bring it closer to the stage.
Yeah.
Or the next day, shit.
Yeah. Well, I would say I used to watch Mooney, and I was like, I feel like Mooney is who he is off stage, on stage. And I realized...
Will you explain Paul Mooney to people who might not? And there's CDs and DVDs about as funny a person as could ever have lived.
Paul Mooney was the writer. He wrote for Richard Pryor, wrote for Eddie Murphy. He wrote for a lot of Homie the Clown, all that stuff. Paul Mooney was this amazing writer, amazing comedian. He was angry but funny.
And handsome. And angry.
And he would get and he would always go up late because he was always like he was edgy. So you're gonna watch some edgy, angry dude just go out and he'd be making you laugh, and then at some point he'd turn on you and be like, "Oh, you find that funny?" And then he would go off on you, and you'd be like, "What just happened?" But he was this amazing person, and
he said Frankenstein was black because they would chase him to the city and he'd be on fire. Everybody's chasing him with fire.
Yeah.
And the little white girl, he's dancing with a little white girl. He steals a pie off the windowsill.
Yeah.
I mean, shit that you're just like, man. Yeah. I mean, he. I saw him one time, and I picked him up I was at the airport in the 90s, and he walks by me with his do-rag, and you smell cologne, perfume, I'm like, Paul, he turns around, he got his little thing. I said, where you going? He goes, I'm going to go get a cow. I said, I'll drive you home.
Yeah.
And he gets in, and he says, have you seen Amistad? And I said, not yet. He goes, I watch it in reverse. All the black people go back to Africa. All the white people get the shit beat out.
Oh, homie, let me tell you. So what I learned from watching him at the Comedy Store was, what you just said, which is the person off stage, the longer you do it, the person off stage starts becoming closer to the person on stage. Because when you first do it, you got this idea in your head. You're like, I'm going to be whoever, Eddie Murphy, whatever. But as you do it more and more, you're like, no, I'm not Eddie Murphy. And you start realizing, and then what you just said, then you start driving home and you're like, that's what I should have said. Let me bring that on. And now you get more and more comfortable.
Yep.
And that's you. You're one.
But it's just a road filled with a consistency in an inconsistent business. Like I remember at the Laugh Factory in the 90s, they would do showcases. And we'd be in there, and they'd be showcasing comedians that were good. And you're at the mercy of a Wednesday night, and maybe the crowd's not good. And I see people lose deals. Not that they weren't funny that night.
Yeah.
And that night was just a night that was just not their night. But instead of them believing you were funny, they had to come and see you.
Yeah.
After they'd already seen you, then they'd bring more people to see you.
Yeah.
And then you would work your way up. I remember when I was with Shapiro West and Diane Barnett, God rest her soul, and she may have told me I think I said it here. Nope. She said to me on the phone, I said, how come, I can't get anybody to come and see me showcase? And she was like, nobody wants to see you.
Wow.
And she said, sometimes, you're so embedded in your beliefs, sometimes you have to take a few steps backwards to take a step forward. And I'm like, I don't think that's...
I agree with you. That's
true.
not. Listen, you got to be true to you. And as a matter of fact, I just shot this special that I'm shopping around right now. I shot at the Comedy Store, and it felt great. It felt really good. And my agents and everybody showed up. And I had agents that hadn't been to my shows in a while, and they were coming up going like, "Wow, that was great. That material could really translate into a TV show." And I'm like, "I've been doing this shit for years, motherfucker. Where you been?"
Yeah.
And the fact is, it's like but we keep doing it, and we go, we believe in it. You sometimes forget, like, people go, "Oh, what's your TV show? Let's come up with a pitch." I go, "Okay," and then I think about it. I go, "Wait a minute. I've been writing the show. It's on stage. Take the jokes. I talk about stumbling into the birds and the bees with my kids. This actually happened, and I'm sure you guys probably have a similar thing for the generations we're from. Nobody did birds and the bees. You know what I'm saying? The joke I do on stage, I asked my Iranian immigrant dad, tell me about the birds and the bees. He goes, son, we don't have birds and bees. We have lawyers and doctors. Just be one. Nobody taught us any of that shit. But this actually happened. I stumbled into the birds and the bees. And this is like, and it's turned into this bit, but I'm just going to tell you what actually happened was, trying to watch shows with my kids. My daughter was 8, my son was 10. And I'm like, what can we watch all together? And Blackish, the TV show Blackish. Yes. I go, well, that's a family show. Let me watch it. Dude, everybody who's listening to this right now, just go on Hulu or wherever you find Blackish. Just get the pilot episode, the first episode of the whole thing. The father walks in on his high school son who's about to masturbate. So the high school son's about to take his pants down, underwear down. The dad walks in, he goes, oh, and he walks out. The son goes, oh, he jumps on the bed. And this actually all happened. So I'm sitting there with my 8-year-old and 10-year-old, and I see it. And you know how it is when you're sitting with your kid, and you're like, oh, I hope they're not going to know what that was. Meanwhile, I had read a book, and actually have my sister is a psychologist. She said, if your kids ever ask you a question, the best thing you can do is be honest. So in my mind, I'm like, if they ask me a question, I got to be honest. Now, my son is sitting next to me. He's 10 years old. He sees this scene. He doesn't even blink. My son, I always say boys are like spaced out. So my son's just spaced out. He's focused.
Yeah.
My daughter, she's 8 years old, right away. And girls, my daughter's like CSI, FBI, CIA. She's like you. She'd be a great detective. She sees everything right away. She goes, what just happened? I swear to God. And I'm like, what do you, I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, oh, the kid's about to masturbate. But I can't tell an 8-year-old.
Yeah, you know.
So I go, oh, what just happened, baby? What just happened? Okay, this is what happened. The dad walked into his room. He's in high school. He was in underwear. It was embarrassing. So he walked out. So I tricked the 8-year-old. She goes, oh, okay. I go, thank God I just dodged a bullet. Very next scene, the father goes to the mom. He goes, hey, I just caught our son playing with himself. I swear to God he said that. You got to go watch the show. And then my son again, clueless. My daughter, what does that mean? Guys, now my sister's voice is in my head. Now I'm realizing this kid's really curious. I swear to God, I start going, I go, baby, sometimes, when boys are in high school, sometimes they just squeeze their pee-pee, just a little squeeze. No. I start saying that, and my daughter's looking at me like, what the fuck? And I'm feeling like a modern proud parent. I've answered the question.
Get through it, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes sometimes boys just squeeze, they squeeze their pee-pee just a little bit. I swear to God, she goes, did you do it? I'm like, you're a fucking kid, man. And this is all. So now I've turned it into a bit on stage, and like that's a scene in a show. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, totally.
So but that's the thing. What I'm saying.
Scene in a pilot.
Scene in a pilot. Like we lean. You know what I'm saying? We talk up. That's why what you just said about your manager. You're like, no, I got to talk about me and my life.
Yeah. When we went to Italy, Anne would be when I was married. Anne would have the whole day lined out for us. So we're in some city, maybe Florence or something, and I'm halfway into a museum, and I'm like it's when a car dies, all the red lights go on. I go, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like I'm done.
Yeah.
Well, you can only get out this way. Fuck that. I'm going out this way.
Right.
And they're like, you can't go out that way, sir. I go, I'm fucking going out that way.
Yeah.
And Mayan sees these two dudes, like one dude is on top of another, and their faces are in each other's crotch. And she's standing there looking at it because the guy's holding another guy, and she goes, "What's this?" And I'm like, "I don't know. They're just playing, horse playing." And she goes, "Oh, good, because they look like they're blowing each other." Come on, stop looking at that.
Oh my God.
We went in, as I Led Zeppelin, we went out through the indoor.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Fuck, get me the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
And she goes back to the hotel, and she's with her books, and she goes, that was so unnecessary. I bring you guys here. Listen, that fucking statue is going to be here in 1,000 fucking years.
Yeah.
And I'm only going to be here till Tuesday.
Yeah.
I've had enough. I've seen just every day was mapped out. I said, why can't we just sit somewhere and make fun of people when they walk by?
Yeah.
You talk about the birds and the bees, and I'll never forget, I'm down at my mom's house. Now, I had 6 sisters, no brothers. Now, my oldest daughter is 12 years old, 12, 13, right around there.
Yeah.
And my mom sits there and says, sit down, I want to talk to you.
Yeah.
And she says, about what? She says, I'm going to tell you the real truth about the birds and the bees right now.
Oh, shit.
And she says, oh, Grandma. She says, no, you sit down right there. I'm going to tell you the stuff that your mother won't tell you because she's too nice.
Oh, wow.
And she says, what are you going to tell me, Grandma? She says, okay, boys are going to promise you gifts. They're going to promise you love. They're going to promise you a lot of things. But all they want is that pussy willow. Keep your legs closed. Don't
Holy
let them
shit.
get to your legs. She says, Grandma, she says, no. Keep your legs closed. All they want is that pussy willow. They don't care about you. They don't care about anything. They want the pussy willow. Do you understand me? My daughter's dying. She says, yes. And I'm sitting there saying, go for it, Mom. You know how to.
Yeah, whatever it is, just keep
So
it.
now, my dad passes away. About 7 years go by.
Yeah.
And I get to my mom's house, and I ask my wife, because my mom used to tell my wife everything, but don't tell me who.
Yeah.
And she knew that my wife was going to tell her. So I get down there, and I said, what's up with my mom? She looks a little nervous. She's going out with a widower right up the street, a couple of doors down.
Oh, shit.
His wife had been deceased for a while.
Yeah.
His daughters were friends with my sisters.
Great.
She says, they're going out to dinner, and she's embarrassed. She doesn't know what to do. I said, hey, Ma. I said, so you're going out to dinner with Sam? She says, ay, mijo, I didn't want to go, pero he kept on. I said, Mom, you've got a lot of years left. You were good to my dad. Go out and have dinner. Enjoy yourself. I said, don't worry about my sister. I'll take care of my sisters. And my daughter looks up. She says, Grandma, remember, they only want one thing, Grandma.
The pussy willow.
That's
Pussy
it.
willow. It's crazy. You know, it's crazy because I remember, again, in doing my bit, and we're talking about all this, like, birds and the bees, I remember, like, a friend, this actually happened, a friend of mine, 7th grade, his name's David, he was walking home, and he found 3 grocery bags filled with Playboys. Like, and when I talk about it on stage, back on stage, I go, back then, we didn't have these videos. You had to find that stuff. And I go, back then people would pay it forward. I go, some dude was done.
Yep.
He left it outside. He's like, some boys are going to find, some other pervert's going to find this shit. So David gave me a bag of Playboys, and that was like, oh my God, that was like holy grail. He goes, like, I found 3. You want a bag? I go, of course I want a bag. Took it home under my blankets, whatever, under my mattress. And that's, that's where I learned to, like, masturbate and all that stuff. But it's funny because I'm trying now, because my son's 14, I'm trying to talk to him, because we all know the guilt you felt. This is age old. Every guy, after he masturbates, is like, I will never do this again. And
Shit, I couldn't wait.
5 minutes later, you're like, I'm doing it again. So I've been trying.
I'm going in.
I've been trying to talk to my son about it. I've been like, hey, buddy, it's natural. If you feel, and now he's 40. He's like, Dad, this is kind of uncomfortable. And I'm like,
Yeah. What is it like having a 14-year-old boy?
There's so many emotions that happen because, first of all,
But also, if it's a sweet kid, you know what's out there.
Yeah.
Sure.
You're just like, oh man,
You've got to be
Dude,
protective.
sweet man,
Dude.
because you know
Yeah.
what's out there.
yeah,
Sure.
And
yeah.
it's just like maybe some kids aren't built for.
Well, it's funny because first of all, you know how it is when you have a kid. It's like that age where they're like preteen and then teen is where you have to stop parenting as much as you've been.
Right.
You've been making their decisions their whole lives. Now they want their own space. So I really pushed myself to be like, all right, let him have his own space. And then he had this one moment like you're talking about. There was this girl, I was pulling up to pick him up. I think he must have been 8th grade. Pulling up to pick him up, and he's talking to this girl. And as soon as I came, he kind of like they both separated really fast. And he got in the car. Like something's happening.
Yeah.
So he gets in the car. I go, hey, buddy, who was that? He goes, oh, it's just a girl, it's his friend. I go, all right. Then we're downstairs. My wife and I were watching television. And I go, hey, buddy, come down and bring the garbage cans down and empty out the garbage, So he comes down, empties out the garbage, and then he walks back up without the garbage cans, like the bathroom garbage cans. And I go, hey buddy, where'd the cans go? You put them in the kitchen garbage can, but you didn't take the little ones back up. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. And now he's walking around the house like chicken with his head cut off. And in all honesty, at first I was like, is he on drugs? That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And I go, hey buddy, you okay? He's like, yeah, I'm good. I go, what's going on? And I go, he goes, nothing. It's good. And he's lost. He doesn't know where he's walking. I go, hey man, come here for a second. Now I'm like getting up, and he's like, what? I go, what's going on? And now he comes in my ear. He starts whispering. He goes, remember that girl? I go, yeah. He goes, she asked me, we have movie night at school tomorrow. She asked if I can go with her. And he goes, but don't tell mommy. Mommy's sitting like 2 feet away.
Yeah.
I go, buddy, you got to tell mommy. Mommy's going to want to hear this. I go, and no one's going to judge you. We love you. And now he's all nervous. He starts telling us. And my wife couldn't be more proud. I'm proud. We're excited for him. And then I go, so what happened? She asked me to do the movie. And we go, and then he goes, but I don't know what that means because they're all watching it at school. And I go, well, we don't know what that means either. Like, what does it mean? And he goes, so what should I do? I go, buddy, just calm down. I go, this is what you're going to do. If you get up to go get popcorn, ask her if she wants popcorn, sit next to her, just hang out, just chill. And this poor kid, he goes to school the next day, and he texts me from school. He's like, my friends told her, I guess her friends had told him that she liked him. And then they talked, and she said, come to the movie. And then enough people found out where the girl got a little hesitant.
Yeah.
So my son texted me. He's like, she just wants to be friends. And it broke my heart. I was like, oh. And then I was like, I wanted to be like, buddy, welcome to women. But I was just like, hey, pal, it's all good. It was heartbreaking, but it was sweet at the same time.
When I was in 10th grade, there was a cheerleader, huge tits, tiny, little overweight.
Yeah.
Overweight. Yeah. And she was the 10th grade, the JV, and I liked her. And I hadn't really had a girlfriend ever. I mean, the junior high was, my whole childhood is fucking nuts. So in 10th grade, I meet her on a Wednesday. We kiss on a Wednesday. I go to her house and watch TV on a Friday, Saturday. And by the next Wednesday, her friends had gotten into her head about me. Like, that dude's like so awkward. And I remember we were going on a field trip that Wednesday, and she broke up with me before we got on the bus. Broke up with me. It was like, I don't think I want to do that.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the?
The influence of their friends.
And I get on the bus. It's drizzling in San Fernando High, and fucking Fleetwood Mac. Well, there you go again. You say you want your freedom.
Oh,
That's
no.
it. That's playing.
Oh,
I don't know
my
where the
God.
fuck we went to this Museum of Modern Art. And you're leaving school, and she just told you that now you're in downtown LA looking at some fucking bones.
Shit.
And you get back to school, you got to go play a game the next day that she's going to be at.
You know what the problem is? It's like you guys know how it is. Like when you used to go to clubs, and you would meet a girl, and you guys are having a great time, but then her friends were like, we got to go. And you're like, we're having a great time. Now, you take that in high school, you take that times 100. They got voices in their ears.
Yeah.
So I remember the night I lost my virginity, my then girlfriend, I was so excited that I think I might have told a couple buddies, and then I think they must have told somebody. So by the time the school day ended, she comes over. She goes, "You've been telling people that we're gonna have sex tonight?" I go, "No, I just told one guy." And she's like, "Hey, asshole! Everybody knows."
Wow.
And I came this close to not losing my virginity that night because I was like, "Listen, let's forget them. Let's just go out."
It was already planned. Like, you planned it?
I planned a date night, so we're gonna go see Tequila Sunrise with Mel Gibson.
Mel
Yeah,
Gibson.
and then I had an.
We all said the same thing. Fucking
And then
movie
I had an aunt who was living near us who had this apartment who had agreed to let me go spend the night with my girlfriend there. So my aunt was going to go spend the night with at our house with my mom, and me and my girlfriend and we'd been dating for a while. So I was like, listen, it's a romantic night. I don't know if I might have told the whole family. I might have told the whole country of Iran. It's happening tonight.
You're in the hospital with blindfold. What?
Yeah, I got something to tell you. Come here. But yeah, it was all planned out, and I came this close to losing it because, like you just said, everyone else was getting in her ears.
I remember one time we went to high school. We used to park in the same place, and there was a center field. This guy Leo James.
Yeah.
And smoke is coming out. He had a Cadillac, like a Brougham, Cadillac, a very long ass car, and a little bit of smoke is coming out of the crease of the hood when you push it down.
Yeah.
So I tell my friend Andy, I go, "Is smoke coming out of fucking Leo's car?" And we're both standing there and we're looking at the hood, and it's just a little bit where it could be that he got an oil leak and the engine got hot and it's smoking, and then Andy's like, I think it's on fire, bro.
Oh, God.
I said, where? We looked through the radio, through the front of the thing, and you
grill.
could see a little orange in there. So his class is right there. Like he had architecture or drafting. It was called drafting. Yeah. And I walk in and we go, Leo. And this guy, Mr. Martin, jazz dude, he's like, excuse me, young man. You just can't walk into my class and yell Leo. Like, Mr. James is sitting there, as a class is sitting there, and anything you have to say to Leo, you can say to the class.
Oh my God.
I said, Leo in the class, your car's on fire. And by that time, motherfuckers, and my friends watching, I said, hey, motherfucker, move my car. The fucking shit's coming out the sides.
See, that's a scene from a movie or a TV show. It's right there. It's written.
They don't think they washed my stains out the back. I couldn't move my car because it was in the line. I couldn't get, hey, are you out of your mind? I tried to get in there and fucking move the car. I said the fucking car blows up. It's going to blow my fucking car up.
See, you couldn't have written the jazz teacher. The way that happened, what you just said.
Exactly, I can tell you.
That's just like, it's beautiful.
Excuse me, man. Hit big long arm and shit, black hand. Excuse me, man.
And all you're worried about is your Mecca-stained back seat.
Manchas.
Hilarious, man.
Leo, glass, your car's up. And by that time, he walked out there. And that motherfucker was engulfed in flames.
Wow.
He didn't take a shower, and he didn't do any car maintenance. We play a baseball game, and he'd be all sweating and shit. He'd put his fucking clothes on over his fucking baseball uniform.
Shit, man.
So this motherfucker a double agent? I said, motherfucking Leo, take a shower, man.
Yeah.
He never took a shower in school. After we'd stay there till fucking 5:30, 6 o'clock, fucking around.
The characters, man. And the thing about it goes back to what I just said. Like it's this intense version of the real world. You see people here and there, but there you're seeing everybody every day
with everything,
and everyone's got something.
And back then it's like I think about it, like everybody's living. Like my grandparents were alive.
Yeah.
Everybody was alive. All my, and it's that time when in the perfect world, nobody's passed yet.
Yeah, man.
Everybody's
what
there.
What a world. You're right.
All your friends' parents are alive. Everybody's grandparents are alive, and every day is a great day.
Yeah.
And you graduate from high school, and we had a great summer in '79, and then I remember the first day of school when I woke up, and it's the first day that there is no school.
Isn't that weird?
And I remember laying back there in that house. It was kind of drizzling and shit. I was like, what the fuck? The fuck am I going to do now?
That's actually one of the things I think that causes, like, a lot of times, like, young people get bipolar or depression in their late teens, early 20s, because it's the first time you haven't been on this treadmill that's making you go.
And whether you chose to learn or not.
Yeah.
It was. I never had a bad time in school. I wasn't the smartest kid, but you had your friends there. You had girls there. You had baseball.
Yeah.
It was all social.
It was
for me.
so great, man.
My parents would go to parent counseling, and then my dad always said, "Let's talk." And same thing every time. You got to try harder because everybody said the same thing. Hey, he's got the intelligence. He's smart. He's just lazy. I didn't care about school. It was all about social. It was all about friends. When I came back from the Army, I thought I was embarrassed because I sent for my transcripts because now I wanted to go to college.
Yeah.
And I obviously thought D stood for damn good. I was embarrassed.
Hey, when you came back from Nam and you see those guys they're not as time goes, but I think you could probably see a family member and not have the reaction that you would have seeing somebody that was with you in Nam.
Oh yeah, I guess
it's much more
emotional for me to see those guys.
Tell them about the guy you saw in Arizona when you went to Arizona.
There was a captain that I flew with when I first went from inserting troops and medevac and doing all that stuff to just get on gunships where all you're doing is going out and shooting up. You're just killing.
Yeah.
And my first flight, this captain, Tom Stemke, we went on a gun run, and so we're shooting, and my gun got jammed, and you'd make a daisy chain, you come back around, you got to be ready to go again. Well, I wasn't ready to go again because it was still jammed.
Yeah.
And when the third time around, I'm ready, I'm hot, and we go. When I come down, this guy came up and he chewed my ass. I had never been chewed out like that before, and nor have I ever been chewed out since then.
Yeah.
And he got dead in my ass saying that I was an integral part. You panic, you die. You need to stay with us. We need you. So he walked away, and I said everything he said was right. So I learned immediately, what my flaws were and what I had to do. And I always wanted to hook up with that guy. You know, he left Vietnam. I left Vietnam. And then I was told he went through PTSD got to him. So he went on the down low.
Yeah.
Had a rough life, and I kept asking for him. Finally, I got a call. Hey, he wants to talk to you. Call him up. Well, he's come out of his low life.
Wow.
And I talked to him, and we reunited. He tough life. Short version, he went into the Army because him and his dad had gotten into a physical altercation.
Wow.
Broke some bones in his dad. He whipped his dad, and he left, had to get away. Went through the downs. He was about to commit suicide and decided to go to church with his wife. One time, he says, I was laughing at her. I said, okay, I'll go this last time. I'll go with you. And that was the day that changed his life. So first thing he did was he called up his dad, and he told his dad, Daddy, I'm sorry. I apologize. I love you. I'm begging for forgiveness. And his dad just told him, son, you don't have to beg me for forgiveness. Everything's done, and I love you. He talked to him. He says, Daddy, I'm going to go see you. His dad was in the hospital. He says, Daddy, I'm going to go see you. His dad died 2 hours later. But it's like that's all he was waiting up for. So now all this time goes by. I'm going to be lecturing in Phoenix. He's going to go on vacation. He's going to be in Phoenix. He's from Michigan. A friend of the family who is a news director at the NBC affiliate in Phoenix says, hey, would you mind if we film this? They're big on this stuff in Phoenix. You know, 2 old veterans like I contacted, hey, yeah, do it. So they did it, and I saw him for the first time in 53 years.
Wow.
And we cried like babies.
Of course.
We just, it was so emotional to see him because he helped get me back alive.
Wow.
And he would say the same thing, I helped him get back. But he was a leader, he's a great man, and it was just...
It's funny to me that, you know, people expect that in families, but I think it's more. I didn't have much of a family, but I think it's maybe more prevalent in some people when they go through something like that.
Yeah, this was life saving. You know, this was life or death, and he did it, and we made it, and another pilot that I flew with in Vietnam just happened. We saw each other and find out we live in the same city today.
Wow.
And the first time I bumped into him and my wife was with me, I said, come here, you got to meet my wife and my family. He came over and he started crying, and we both started crying. And he just said, you don't understand. I never knew if we were going to make it out alive.
Yeah.
We're here, and the last thing I ever thought of was how to have the opportunity to meet the family.
Wow.
And so it was because that was true. That was true love. I mean, you needed each other. That was my brother. That was both of my brothers.
It's funny what becomes a trigger. You know, when mine was like in Little League, and you know it's T-ball, and there's no peril, there's no risk. It's just kids playing T-ball. And then the next year they got a little more serious, and it wasn't as fun for girls to be with the other guy. But we went to the driving range. They had the party with the whole team.
Yeah.
And then they're signing baseballs, and she was in the car seat, and you know, she's like, Daddy, look, you know, they gave us a baseball. And I look at the baseball, and you see all the kids' signatures. And I said, never forget your first coach or your first team. And I was crying.
Yeah.
And I was like, fucking, what the fuck?
Yeah.
You know, because I loved being part of a team.
Yeah.
Only child. A team to me meant family.
Yeah.
Sure.
Which I didn't have at home.
Yeah.
But just holding that baseball and seeing those names on them.
I teared up the other day, 2 days ago.
Sat on your balls again?
I sat on my balls. I got a message from a family that was one of the first murders I handled back in 1981.
Wow.
And I got very close with the family. Matter of fact, I was invited to one of the weddings, and one of their kids' weddings, and that was an early on murder. And I remember I was third wheel, 2 other investigators, because I was new, I was learning. Yeah. But I wanted to do all the work. I wrote search warrants. I put in the time and the effort. And those guys, one was on his way out, and the other one hated to be there anyway. Yeah. And so I did this. And now here, 40-some years later, they're still reaching out.
And who was it?
It was a family from Baldwin Park, and he got killed on their 25th wedding anniversary. The husband did. And the son, Tommy Cardenas, he was shot And he had been a former explorer for Baldwin Park Police Department. They shot him because they thought he was a cop. And both his lungs collapsed. They were able to save his life. They shot him multiple times. But the family was a beautiful family. And my heart just went out to him. I gave him every bit of energy that I had. We solved the case. We convicted the guys. The judge in that case, that piece of shit, the jury convicted the guy of first-degree murder, and the judge sentencing day reduced it from a first to a second because he said he felt the jurors dealt with their hearts and not with their minds, which was absurd for him to do that. And I just told the wife, I remember calling a local friend of mine with the press, and I said, I can't tell you this, but if you call me back up, I can tell you what happened in the courtroom today because I can't give you the information. So he called me. He said, hey, Gil, what happened again? And I told him. The next day, 2 days later, they had pictures of the judge front page and what he had done to the family. I had.
And why did he do that? Was it just the way he judged?
I have no idea. I had people ready to protest the court. They were ready to go out there and picket. It was the wrong thing to do.
How many years did the guy get, though? The guy that killed him?
Well, then, they because he did that, and because they appealed the case, it got overturned. His everything.
Yeah.
So now it's getting ready to go back. They're going to retry the guy.
Oh, wow.
And instead of fighting it, he pled guilty. He pled out. So he got a long term for what he did. But that was my first case, and 40 years later, the family's reaching out and still remembers what we did and how it went.
Isn't it amazing that he gets a lot of stuff from Night Stalker groups or cliques that they're like, hey, the wrong one died. I mean, where somebody, you have a guy who's a fucking demon who really looked like a fucking devil in that special where he's not wearing a shirt and his bones are sticking up and he's got scratches on his body.
Yeah,
man.
That's what I look like without a shirt on.
Listen, man, if you could see that shit in the middle of the night when you're not expecting it, that guy, that guy's in your house.
Well, that's like with the Dahmer Netflix thing. Like a lot of people coming off of the Dahmer Netflix thing, a lot of people were like watching it and going like, oh, I like this guy. They like Dahmer. And you go, he was eating people.
Yeah.
He was fucking eating people and putting them away like leftovers. And
but that all goes back to
take
what
a bag with you.
That all goes
corner
back,
flour tortillas.
That all goes back to what you were saying about like being judged on your material and stuff. When you realize that there's a lot of crazy out there, and you go, no matter what you say and do, everyone's got back in the day, if people had opinions, they had to write you a letter.
Yeah.
You have to open it up.
Or the comedy club would leave a fucking thing on the desk. Tell us what you think of our comedians. Like, that shit was bullshit.
Yeah. But now they just write it. They just write it on Twitter or wherever it is. And so when you realize the level of crazy that's out there, that's when you got to go, you know what, I'm just going to let this go. Because as you just said, someone's going to go and, idolize the killer and be like, well, that killer is whatever. Or the lady who married the Menendez. Remember, she was representing the Menendez. She married her. I mean, it's crazy out there.
But they get their. I mean, I don't think I would. I mean, as a baseball player, I don't think I was gonna fucking hang around with some dudes that wore all black, and with 9 Inch Nail T-shirts and all that other bullshit. Like my grandfather was like, "Get that cabrón."
Yeah.
If I would have dyed my hair, he would have taken me and washed it and shampooed it till all the dye came out.
Well,
that's also where you come from. Like again, that goes back to the immigrant background and stuff too. Is like I feel like a lot of times I worry like I didn't get high or do any of that stuff going through high school because I feared my parents' wrath. You know what I'm saying? Like I think that it's good to fear your parents. You got to love them, but it's good to fear them. Because you got to have that thing of where like when that one kid in the car was like, hey, let's all try some of this blow, and the other one goes, my dad would fucking kill me, and I want my kids to know that. I've told them that. I go, you show up with that shit. I mean, there was a great scene. I think it was the movie was called I Like It Like That. I think that was what it was. They're Puerto Rican.
That was a good movie, yeah.
Great movie, right? Is that the one where the Puerto Rican dad gets in a fight with the mom? They're arguing. And the son steps up and the son's like 10 years old. I think that's what this was.
Yeah, I think it is.
The son's like 10 or 11 years old. And he steps up to the dad. He's like, Dad, don't talk to my mom like that. And he goes, you're little big man. Okay. You want to be a man? Okay. Who bought you that shirt? And he goes, and the kid, you see the kid starting to melt. And he goes, you did? Okay, can I give me my shirt back? Because you're a man now. You could be right. Yeah, give me the shirt.
Wow.
Who bought you the pants? And this dad, and it breaks my heart as I'm talking about this, but at the same time, the lesson that like this dad taught that kid, he basically gets the kid to take all of his clothes off, and he goes, "Whose house is this? Who pays for the house?" And he goes, "You do." He goes, "All right." He opens the door. They're like in a apartment in New York. He puts him outside the door and he closes the door. So now the kid's in the hallway naked. Now that's heartbreaking, but at the same time, the lesson that kid learned right there was to fear that dad. Now again, I don't know if it's good or bad or whatever, but like the dad gives it a few beats and then he opens the door. He goes, "Ready to come back in?" And the kid goes, "Yeah," and he brings the kid back in. And there's nuances to this, right? I'm not condoning kicking your kid out and making them naked, but I am saying that if I said to my kids, if I see you like, showing up with some fucking white powder, I'm, good luck on get the fuck out of my house. When I was a senior, we had a band play right outside the auditorium for lunch, and me and my friends were already drinking like before lunch. We're fucking hammered. And we're watching this band play, cover tunes, and they said, "Hey, don't you have an interview at Sears in Northridge at 2:30?" I'm like, "Fuck yeah, man!" My girlfriend worked at Sears at that. She was already out of school. I was a senior. You gonna go? I go, "Man, I gotta go." I was hammered, man, like hammered. So I drive in my Ghost down there to Northridge. I go in there. I'm sitting in the chair in the personnel department. And it's like when they put you in those rides where they flip it and you just keep going around in circles. I'm sitting there, but I'm spinning. I'm spinning in the chair like I'm going around and around. And I said, how long is it? And she's like, "How long is what?" "Your interview's in 15 minutes. You're early." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll be back at 1:30. And I'm fucking spinning, man. And it's, in the middle of 1:30, 2:15, whatever. I lay down. I fucking woke up. It was already dark outside.
Oh.
I slept for 6 hours in that fucking car in the front seat. I got up and, you lean up and you're like, where the fuck am I?
Oh, God.
I was in a parking lot. I saw the sign Sears. All the cars were gone. And I woke up in there fucking 6 hours later, man.
Shit.
And I caught shit from her for missing you missed your appointment?
Yeah.
Well, I was there, but I fell asleep in the car.
I was close.
I slept in that fucking car forever. I should have kept that car and just slept outside in that fucking thing. I don't sleep 6 hours in a row. Man. But I wouldn't want mine to have had my childhood. We gave her a few obstacles, but I think it may I don't know, man. It's kids, what they hold on to. You know? But I don't think I would have changed very much of mine. Like I had fun with the guys I grew up with, and even though it was painful, growing up is painful.
And that's what gives you the stories and the knowledge and also the perspective. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like it's look, we've all had a lot of great things and a lot of bad things. And you can't imagine if you only had good things.
One time that somebody had a pool, and we didn't have fucking bases. And go in your underwear. I was like, going in my underwear. So you go in your underwear, and that's where I got that joke where the underwear's all. And my grandma's like, "Pull the front." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "Pull the front." The front of what? My because they get stick.
Yeah, of course.
Balls.
Yeah.
And that's all she did. Watching the kids swim. Pull the front.
Hilarious.
Pull it out there. Give it a little room in there.
Dude, I remember my dad used to. My mom used to take me clothes shopping. I hated it. My mom would be like, "Try this on. Try that on." I try it on. She'd be like, "All right, we're gonna go across the street. Might be cheaper." And we'd be like 8-hour process. I hated it. One time with my dad, Large, baller. Baller walks into Nordstrom's. He goes, "What do you want?" I go, "I don't know. How about that shirt, that, and that?" He goes, "All right. What's your size?" Da 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 da. He goes to the lady. "Hello, young lady. Give." I says my dad. "For him, give this,
oh my God.
and give for me same thing, large." So we got the same outfits.
Oh my
he got
God.
like whatever I pointed out. He's like, "Just give me the same shit."
That's fucking hilarious.
And it was like it took 5 minutes, 10 minutes. We're done.
That's hilarious.
And so,
give me the same thing.
Same thing. But he was a big sweatsuit guy. Again, they're very like mafia.
But what kind of sweatsuit like that?
Like Sergio Tacchini, Fila, you name it. So I had this Fila.
Fucking Sergio Tacchini.
I had this Fila, like a baby blue Fila sweatsuit.
I see it.
combo.
I see it already.
And one day I woke up, I didn't have clean underwear, so I'm going underwearless. Imagine this: 16 years old, no underwear, fucking Sergio Tequila. I'm sorry, tequila, bro. I'm walking down the hallway, and I got the biggest hard on I could. I'm holding a tent right there, and I'm just like, oh, and I'm like, people, and it was one of those things. He said, pull the front, made me think of that.
Yeah.
Pull the front, made me think of that, because I was like, and I'm trying to think. You're trying to think thoughts, because you can't. Because now kids are walking by, you can't be like grabbing your crotch. So like you're thinking thoughts of like, the dead rabbits, and you're just trying to think of thoughts to bring it. You're like, just calm down. But I'm walking through. I mean, I was like saluting everybody.
When we had baseball practice and there was outside of Laurel Canyon there, and I was at third base, and I saw my girlfriend drive by. She had a Toyota like GT, and my dick got hard. I said, "Oh, there might be future. We're taking infield. You see her car. She honks. Papa, you see her car.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Shit, man.
It's also the. I probably shouldn't say this, but when we were 19, we said, "Hey, if we're in our 50s, I mean, when you're 19, think about when you're 19 or 20, and we said if we're in our 50s and we're not with anybody, we should reconnect and spend the rest of our lives together."
It's like Harry met Sally.
And I'm not with anybody, and I invited her to a show at the Forum, and then she came back. Everybody came back to my house, and she's like, "Remember the pact that we made?" And I said, "The pact that we made? When? When we were 19. I was 20. You were 19." I said, about us being together like in our 50s, that was a long time ago. She goes, "Well, you're not with anybody." I said, "But you're married." And she's like, "Say the word and I'll fuck her hair like that." Like, well, what word is it? Because I'm going to want to fucking say it by accident.
Oh, hilarious.
And I think she moved to Florida, but I think if I were to say to her, "Leave your husband and come and live with me."
Yeah. Soulmates.
Just honk your horn one time going by.
Pull up front. No, I'm not gonna. I won't be doing that shit.
No, man, it's an exciting time. That's when you asked me about my son. It's like I'm excited for him, and I'm excited for my daughter too. You know
It's new. Like everything's new, man. Everything, even old is new. Like new. Listen, man. Every day is a gift.
Yeah.
And every day is a chance to be better or to just be. It's better to be than to have been.
Yeah. But we definitely are like the Yodas to them, to their Luke Skywalker. It's like a lot of times you see them doing something and you're like, "Yo, let me just tell you real quickly."
I know. My grandpa would say, "You know what you're doing?" And I would say, "Yeah, I know what I'm doing." And I fucking didn't know what I was doing.
Hilarious.
But I didn't want to tell him I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah, of course. No, you think you know. I mean, that's the age-old thing. Like every age you're at, you think you know. I've even like recently, he was going to some trip with the school, and I was like, "Buddy, take this jacket. They've said bring the extra jacket. I don't need it. Just put it in your goddamn backpack. See what happens." And then when he comes back, he goes, "You know what? You were right." I go, "I know I was right."
My son is 44 years old. I've hated since he was a kid. All he ever said was, and I tell his mom, and I still tell her today. I said, I tried to tell my son something. He goes, "I know, Dad."
I know, Dad.
To this day, I know.
Yeah.
Well, God damn it, if you know, why do you do this shit?
Yeah.
But it's part of it is for us to let go too. Like I talk to my wife about that a lot. I go, and I got to check myself sometimes. Like just let go, let him learn.
What part of you are you like your dad?
I think I try to be generous. I learned generosity from my father for sure. And taking, I've actually been fighting this now where he taught me to take care of everybody. You know what I'm saying? Like take care of everybody. And then I realized I don't care how powerful you are, you can't take care of everybody.
And what was your grandfather? You remember your grandfather, his father?
No, not his father. I never met his father because his father passed away before I was born. But my grandfather from my mother's side was this like salt of the earth, like a Gandhi type. Like he was another person he lived with us. He was one of the closest people to me. So my grandfather was just this.
That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, man. His name was Akbar Farzana, and he was this dude. He'd wake up every morning because, think about it. He was born like probably 1903, 1905. We don't even know what year. in Iran. We don't know what year. Because no, that's the thing. Like I used to do a joke about like every once in a while, it was someone else's birthday, we just throw them in. We were like, "It's your birthday too." It's like, all right.
Fucking same time. Yeah.
But back then in the world he grew up in, like when you wake up, there's no baggy pants, there's no holes in jeans. He used to wake up every morning, 3-piece suit, fedora, right? And then he had nothing to do. He was retired. He was living with us. He'd get on a bus, take the bus down to like to the market, get fruits, blah blah blah, food, come back, cook. Once in a while he'd get up, clean the whole kitchen. He was this guy that really I learned a lot from. So that was my grandfather from my mother's side.
Yep.
And then from my and he was just kind. He was a good human being. And then my dad, like I said, my dad was just like there for everyone. A story I tell about my dad. So my dad, he had was it 3 or 4 brothers and 2 sisters, but he was the oldest son. And he worshipped his mother because he lost his dad at a young age, right? So when he lost his dad in this patriarchal culture back in Iran in the whatever it was, 40s or whatever, 50s, he had to step up and be the man, right? So he goes from one town in Iran called Tabriz to Tehran, and he starts get into this. He starts becoming successful. At a certain point, he's super successful. So all of his brothers are working under him. They have this electric company. One of his brothers is this guy who, without telling the family, he marries this woman and has 2 kids with her. But he doesn't tell the family because she comes from like another class where he feels he'll be judged. So he's got a secret family on the side.
Ooh.
Meanwhile, he's working under my dad for this company, so they send him to like let's say like the offices in Big Bear or something, 2-hour drive. So he goes there. He gets a call from his wife one day, like early in the morning, going, "Hey, one of our kids is like has a fever. Come back." So he gets in his car at like 2, 3 in the morning, whatever it is, starts driving back to go see his sick kid. Windy roads back then, basically drives off a cliff. Oh. And this goes to what I say when you go, no matter how powerful you are, you can't control everything.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So my father told the story of like back then he was so powerful that he could like charter a plane. He goes, I get a plane with my friend who's like, the general of whatever, the army or whatever. We get this private plane. We're going to go fly to this, far off place where, you got to get there fast. You take hours to drive. Right. And he goes, before I leave, he goes, my mother, meaning my grandmother, his mother, grabs his arm and goes, whatever you do, keep my son alive. And he goes, okay. And like he took that upon himself. And he goes, I land at this like far off place in the mountains. And he goes, I see my brother. And he goes, he had such a bad accident. His head was the size of a watermelon. Ooh. And he goes, he was in the bed in the hospital, and he had like 105, 106 degree fever, like he was going to die. And he goes, I went to the doctors, and back then again, my dad, people knew my dad. Right. He goes, I went to the hospital staff. I go, you keep my brother alive, or I'm going to fuck all you guys up. So he goes, next thing you know, the doctors, everyone's just pouring ice into this bed and just bringing his fever down. So he saves the guy, but this poor guy, the rest of his life, like half his body was paralyzed. And he lived the rest of his life. The only thing he had to look forward to, he would just have a drink or 2 every day. He was like, he had alcoholism too, but his life was miserable.
Yeah.
So I tell this story all the time. I go, this guy tried to control everything. Yes. He tried to save his brother because his mother said, "Save my son." Yeah. But even he couldn't. Like this other guy had a miserable life. So what's the point?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to let it go.
I was driving out to have a house out of LA, and I have the cars that have like the high performance tires or low profile tires, and I was in one car and the tire was busted on the inside, and he said to me, I don't know how this tire didn't blow up on you, man.
Wow.
I don't know how you. So it happened again in another car. And I got there, and when I came out, the tire was flat. It's a brand new tire. It had a huge fucking spike through it, man. And I went and got a car that has tires like you can ride in the like tires that you won't have to worry about performance.
Yeah.
And because I feel there's an instinct in me that one time, two times,
Yeah.
there's not going to be a third time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that car is probably not built with those tires to go that far
Yeah.
because of what's on the road.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're driving 90 miles an hour and you blow out, you got no chance.
Again, you realize, like, I don't care who you are. Steve Jobs was the richest man in the world. He got cancer, he died. So you realize
He was having a yacht built by hand, all wood, and he was gone. And then they go, "Hey, your boat's ready," and it was just this beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And you can't control that. And I feel like I was going down the road
Yeah.
of something that would have been bad for me.
Yeah.
Like a blowout on the highway at 4 or 5 in the morning.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you recognize it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely, man.
All right, Maz.
Yo,
Thanks for
thanks for
coming in,
having me,
brother.
man.
What can
It was
we
a
promote?
pleasure.
Gil.
Pleasure.
I'm still touring. If anybody follows me at Maz Jobrani on like Instagram and all that, I've been talking about the protests in Iran now.
Yes.
So
what's
that's
going
big-
on in Iran?
So what happened was, it's interesting. Like 2-3 months ago, I was a comedian. Now I've become like an activist.
Right.
Because what happened was, so what I told you guys earlier, when there was a revolution 43 years ago, the Ayatollah Khomeini comes in. For 43 years, it's been the Islamic Republic of Iran, which means women have been oppressed, LGBTQ have been oppressed, religious minorities have been oppressed, and the people of Iran, the young people of Iran, have been suffering under this regime. And so just a few months ago, there was a young girl named Mahsa Amini, 22 years old, walking down the street. Her hair was out of her hijab just a little bit. The morality police showed up, arrested her, and in the process killed her. And that led to protests. And now these protests have been going on for 2-3 months. They've killed at least 400 or so people. They've imprisoned thousands of people. And it's an oppressive regime. And it's like, I warn Americans, I go, don't mix religion with politics.
Right.
Because that's what we end up with. You end up with a morality state that tells you, dress like this, do that, do that. So
And even still now, Maz, like in this westernized civilization, like they still are in
well,
that.
think about it. I mean, like the fact that they took away, I don't care where you stand on abortion, whether you're pro or anti, whatever, but the fact that you took a woman's choice away after 50 years,
yeah.
right? So we should be able to choose. Similarly with the hijab, if you want to cover yourself, great. If you
Right.
don't. But this regime is so oppressive. And they execute people, and they've really, and they're corrupt. So a lot of times these guys who are up top who are like, God said this, that, the other.
Yeah.
They're like, God also told me to take a couple million
Yes.
and funnel it off.
Yeah.
They have children living in the West. It's a really, I mean, as somebody who is privileged to live in the world that we live in, I felt like I had to express, use my voice.
Sure, of course, no.
So my whole page has become
But you know
that.
what, man? It's not an easy choice to do that. I mean, it seems easy to be able to stand up for what you believe in and what your country, but also with the way social media is,
Yeah.
there are vipers
Yeah.
everywhere, and people that would just have their sense be to bring you down.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, people were like attacking a little bit. And what I realized quickly, I was like, I just got to I can't even engage them.
No, not at all.
I got to stay the course. Public Enemy had a song, He Got Game. And there's a line in there that's basically it says something along the lines of like, fuck the game if it ain't saying nothing. And I've always been someone who feels like you got to say something. You know what I'm saying? We have to say something. Richard Pryor, right? Again, Muhammad Ali, Colin Kaepernick. I'm always very much a proponent of saying something. Even you in your comedy, right?
Yeah.
You're saying something. You're calling people out on their shit. And so if you're not, what's the point? So for me,
They say nothing, be nothing.
yeah, that's it. Say nothing, be nothing, right?
Yeah.
But I've been going to school.
But that's
now.
heavy. That's heavy, man. That's
Yeah.
I mean, politics here are one thing, but politics of you as an American, Iranian is another. It's another. That all that stuff over there is.
Do you feel endangered for doing this?
It's funny, Gil, that you asked that. It's funny because I've been doing a bit. As comedians, we're always working. You get a death threat, you're like, oh, this is a good bit.
Yeah.
So I've been doing this bit about how growing up, and this is true, like the generation of my parents, and maybe even my own generation, there was this fear that was instilled in Iranians around the world.
Yeah.
And this comes from any immigrant that comes from a country where, they were oppressive, where my parents would be like, don't talk about them, right? Don't talk about them. They're going to come for you. Who? They. Who is they? Them. Who is them? And I was like, I'm in the 6th grade in Northern California. Who's coming after me?
Yeah.
So that was in my head. Right now I'm seeing in Iran, these listen, dude, the women, the young people, they don't give a shit. They're walking towards the bullets because they've had enough.
It's incredible.
So when I see that, I go, these guys don't give a shit. So I went online. This is actually true. I went online once the protest started. I posted right away. I go, I support the people of Iran. I'm with the people of Iran. Mahsa Amini was killed. We need to support these young people that want their freedoms. I'm with you. So I posted it. My aunt calls me up. What are you doing? I go, what? They're going to come after you. Who? They. Who is they? Them. And then she says this. I happen to be on tour in Europe. I'm in Germany doing shows, and I forgot to put the do not disturb sign on my hotel room. I swear to God, the next morning after my aunt was in my head, the fucking cleaning lady comes into my room 7 a.m. She opens my door. She starts coming in. You've never seen me jump out of bed. I thought it was them. I jump out. And she's like, I'm like, what? And she's like, it's okay. And I'm like, who are you? And she's like, I'm the cleaning lady. I was like, shit. And I realized my aunt had gotten in my head. And I say, and the joke I do is, and this is true. I call her up. I go, listen, I'm sure I'm on an enemies list, but I'm like number 10,000. They're gonna send some intern. You know what I'm saying? He's gonna be sitting in the back of the comedy club, being like, this is not a bad place to be. So anyway, all that to say, I honestly sometimes I feel like all it takes is one nut job, but at the same time, I go, dude, I gotta be like, I would rather say something and have that threat than not say something and feel like I.
Thank you for what you do on behalf of the Iranian people.
I appreciate you, man.
I went viral. I can't. I think I made something against a leader, and I live alone. And every night I thought they were going to come in and put a suppository on my culo like Marilyn Monroe. They're going to come in here and give me the fucking Marilyn Monroe, man. They're going to hold me down and put a suppository.
They better be wearing 2 gloves.
Jolly Rancher in my culo, and I'll wake up. Oh, he died naturally.
Naturally.
You know?
Shit, man.
I swear to it went through my head, man.
It goes through our heads. Of course it is.
These guys are going to fucking get in. First of all, I'm not going to hear them get in. Well, you have dogs. That'll fucking misted those dogs.
Yeah. These guys are trained to do this shit.
They're from the animal rescue anyway. They'd be
hilarious. Shh. Hilarious. When you see that guy that jumped on stage with Chappelle, you're like, that guy was not a Navy SEAL. That guy was just an idiot. The fact that he was able to get into the with
a knife. Yeah,
and to get into Hollywood Bowl and to get in when you see that you really don't need to be that trained to go after somebody, you go, man, if that's the case.
Man, I think for as much as people believe that they're safe, it's still very primitive, our safety.
Yeah, of course.
I live in a place where when I pull out, there's a brick wall there.
Yeah.
And somebody could be standing there.
Yeah.
With a black thing on and and they just drop the gun and get on a fucking bike and go downhill and be gone, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it's I would say that if you feel safe, there's people who feel safe and there's people who make sure they are safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We're one of the ones that make sure
you're
we're
never safe. Whenever somebody wants you, you turn, or you get run over by a car, in an ugly accident.
I talk about that too because we all get scared about this, that, the other, and I go, you can be worried about one thing. You can be walking down the street and that friggin' tree is just going to fall right on your head.
Oh, yeah.
That's all it takes.
This guy in the motorcycle up in Malibu, the truck there's an accident right in front of him, and the truck came and hit him, and they thought he was going to die. And he's alive. 8 days later, he's alive and well. He was doing nothing more than sitting on his motorcycle at a red light.
Yeah. Who was riding a motorcycle? Alonzo.
Bowden, yeah.
So I was telling him, I love motorcycles. I think they're great.
Yeah.
I rode one in a movie. I wouldn't know. I want to own one, but I never would. We were playing golf in Malibu, the Malibu Country Club. We're going up Canaan Road, and there's a lot of dust. We're coming up Canaan. There's a lot of dust, and we look, and there's a guy over there, and he's laying face down. His motorcycle's probably 50 yards ahead of him.
Shit.
and it's still on. The tire's spinning. There's all this smoke, and he's laying there, chest down, and his head is turning like this, like just his helmet's on, and he's laying flat out, and his head's just turning like this. And in the middle of the street, about 50 yards behind him, is his fucking leg from the knee down. Still in the boot.
God.
Still in the boot.
Shit, man.
And I'm like, and we just came, we were golfing. We just came up on it, and we're like, I don't give a fuck if they gave me a bike every day.
Yeah,
I wouldn't ride one in the street. It's so dangerous,
bro. It was I was driving down to the La Jolla Comedy Store one weekend, and there was bumper to bumper. You know how it is, bumper to bumper. Mm-hmm. And I tell myself something. I go, don't complain, because you don't know what it is.
It's all in the universe, anyways.
Yeah, and I'm driving, and then all of a sudden I see the motorcycle, and the tarp was over the guy. He's dead. And in my mind, I'm like, now I gotta go tell jokes. But it was crazy.
Well, we were in the car, I was telling the guy that was driving me for Blue Beetle in Atlanta, it's like, we're talking about motorcycles. Man, I love them, man. The fat tire in the back, Harley Davidson or an Indian, black and down. And we're driving probably like 40 minutes, 30 minutes in. There's bumper to bumper. We're like, what's the matter? There was a motorcycle accident. So it's like you're talking about it.
Yeah.
There's an accident. It's like,
it doesn't matter. August 31st, 1986. Aeromexico and a private plane over city of Cerritos. 84 passengers, all dead.
Yeah.
People on the ground, dead.
Yeah.
Up
You don't
there,
know.
you
You don't know.
never know what your day.
Yeah.
Matter
It's
of
funny,
fact, a good friend of mine picked up a coin, 25 centavos. And he says, oh, man, it's a lucky coin. I said, how in the fuck do you figure that's a lucky coin? Look at what happened.
Yeah.
And he says, what are the odds of that going down on 2 planes? I'll never fly without it again.
Oh, shit.
is that what he said? He found a coin? You were out there?
Yeah.
You saw that shit hit?
Well, I didn't see it hit. I saw this. I was out there for 3 days picking up body parts.
Wow. Yeah, you just never know.
Yeah.
Our friend David Arnold, man. David Arnold just went to bed, didn't wake up. But you're talking about protection too. It was like around the time of I was here at the ATC network, and I was driving home right when the lockdown happened. And every gun shop had lines outside the gun shop. And I was like, maybe I should buy a gun. And I thought about it for a little bit. And then I was like, you know what? Let me start with a bat. So now I got this bat in my house. So I was like, if somebody shows up with a baseball, I'm ready to go. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Again, thank you, man. So much.
Thank you guys.
It's great to sit with
Great
you,
conversation.
All right.